It's going to be very, very uncomfortable for the press, reporting and covering,
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yes.
And do you think that's right?
Well, I think a lot of journalists, newspaper journalists, particularly popular newspaper journalists in this country, have been pushing it far too far for far too long, and I think it's all going to come together in this inquiry. Whether it has any impact in the end, we don't know.
What are you hoping will come out of it?
Well, I think you've got to have a proper system of regulation.
Well, Ross Hawkins alluded to, which is?
Well, you've got to, I don't think it's... Well, what worries me about what's happening is that journalists en masse are almost coming together saying you can't have state interference in the press. Regulation isn't state interference. It's about saying there's a... anyone suggests that it should be a pre-publication system whereby you haven't to see anyone sees or looks at stories before they're published, but post-publication, if you've got it wrong, then the individual has got to have the right of complaint, there has got to be a proper investigation, and there's got to be the right to fine. Those things change the world. Now,
I mean, that's a rebalancing, if you like. What the press are worried about, of course, is it's going to be, too big a hammer here on their freedom to report stories, and that stories will not get covered that are in the public interest.
Well, I'm not sure that's true, you see. What doesn't get covered? Broadcasters have lived with this for many, many years, and broadcasters have been equally as brave, if not more so, than most of the popular press.
Under regulation.
Under regulation. Now, I'm not suggesting you should have the sort of level of regulation broadcasters have had, but I do think you're going to have proper regulation, because I think the popular press got out of control.
And you think now that the press, however difficult it is for them this week, have accepted that?
I think they're beginning to accept it. I think their fear is, does it stop them doing... If it stops them doing the sort of thing the News of the World was doing, then fine. The News of the World is no great loss to British journalism.
Well, I mean...
It broke the odd very good story. It also broke some unfair stories. It also, in many ways, as you've seen, terrorised people in their reporting methods. And I don't think that's acceptable in this world. And I think they're not alone. I think there are some journalists have been out of control for many years.
I mean, I suppose in terms of journalists themselves, there's a lot of pressure on them to get big stories, to get exclusives, to sell those papers. You can understand why those practices, if not those practices, but why loose practices are used. There's
a lot of pressure from certain editors on the people who are working for them to get stories that appeal to those editors that sell papers.
Yes.
That's okay, that's life. Therefore, you've got to have something that rebalances that says, hang on, those tactics aren't acceptable. They're not morally acceptable.
Difficult at the moment while the police investigation is going on, isn't it? Difficult for them to look at the unlawful illegality.
Well, I think it's difference between what is morally acceptable and what is not legal. And I don't think this is an investigation only into phone hacking. It's going to go far beyond that, as it should.